Okay, hello all of my YouTube people. So I need to tighten up or loosen my chain a little bit. My chain's kind of tight. So I thought I would just make a little video and show you all how these dual axle adjusters that I have on here work. And yeah, so let's get to it. Let's adjust this down. Got my my axle nut on this side. So first what I'm going to do now, I'm going to back off this like on the opposite side where my axle nut is. I'm going to back that off, and then I'll loosen my axle a little bit just so it's loose enough that I can actually move it. And then I'll back these off. So these ones pull, and these ones pull the axle back, and these ones will push against the axle, so they'll push it forward. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to back these off a little bit so that they're not pulling. I'm going to do half a turn each. And if I turn them equally, then I won't have to mess around with like aligning my axle anymore after that. So I'm going to back these each by half a turn, and then I'll turn these in again so that they're pushing till that they get tight. And then that way I know that I've bottomed these out. So I'm gonna start by just loosening my axle nut a little bit. And I'm gonna make sure you guys are gonna be able to see what I'm doing here. Okay, I've got that all set up for you guys so you can see both sides now. So I'm gonna just loosen this one off a little bit so I can get a wrench on to here, so that I can turn my axle nut out just a little bit. So 9/16 here. I always have to remind myself which way things turn. Okay, so just gonna loosen that off. 7/16 here. Oops. I just want to be able to get the get this out so that I can turn the nut actually. So I'm just gonna move that back as far as it needs to go, which that should be good. And then I'll loosen that nut just a little bit so that it's not, so that I'm actually able to adjust the axle with these adjusters. This wrench is a little long, so I have to actually come over here now. Yes. Okay. Just want to make it. I don't want to make it so loose that anything moves too much, or I don't want my swing arm like bowing out. Just gonna loosen it enough that I can actually move the axle. Okay. So a little bit more. That should be good now. That's actually loose. That should be good. Now I'm gonna just back these two out by half a turn each. So got a socket here, and I'm just gonna go half a turn each on those. Now those are loose. See, now these are loose. So now those are loose. Now I'm gonna push the axle forward so that till these get snug again. Loosen this lock nut just a bit, just so that I'm actually able to wind this out. Oops. Okay, just gonna loosen it a bit. And I will tighten these both up so that push that one out. Just gonna do them, like, you don't have to really do them equally because you're just doing it until these are already starting to tighten up. So now that I've got these nuts set to where they, or these bolts, sorry, set pushing on the axle to where they should be, now I'm going to back this one off a bit so that these are tight now, right? Because this is all pushing the axle forward, which tightens these back up. So my axle is going to be even still, right? Because I backed these off evenly. So it's pushing forward, the axle forward till these are tight and everything stays so that nothing goes crooked here. Now I need to tighten up my axle nut. So I'm going to back this off so that I can turn my axle nut, and I'm going to do it not all the way in this step. I've checked my chain and I've got about 1.5 inches to 2 inches of play there now in the tight spot. That was the tightest spot of the chain there. So I'm going to just snug this axle nut up just enough so that it's binding and it's not going to move, because then I'm going to, after I've snugged that up, I'm going to do these one more time. I'm going to tighten these bolts down and give them their final tightening. And then I can back this one off again and just and then torque my axle down to its final setting. This might seem like an extra step right here, how I'm doing this, but it's more just as a cautionary step, just to make sure that the axle is gonna stay in the position you want it to be by the time you're finished the entire process. To make sure that this time, that when I tighten my axle, I'm pushing to the front of the bike with the wrench and not pulling, because I don't want to pull the axle back now. I want it to stay where it is. So I'm going to make sure that I'm pushing forward with the wrench rather than pulling back to get that. And this wrench is just a little bit too tall that can't just go all the way around. So I just want this just to bind. I don't want it to be all the way tight. So that is just binding right there. Now I'm going to tighten these back down. You want to make sure you tighten them on a flat part of the nut too. Obviously you don't want it tightened down on a point. So I'm just going to turn this just a tiny bit more just so it's actually flat. There you go. Now that's on a flat. And now I'm just going to tighten these up for their final tightening to make sure that they haven't moved at all. All right. So I've tightened these up to just their final, to like just basically just double checked them to make sure that they're still snug, and they did. I turned them each probably about a quarter turn now to get them just set exactly where they need to go. So now that that's done, now I'm going to back this one off just so that I can tighten my axle up, so my axle's not going to move now because I snugged it up to begin with, right? So now I just want to back that out so that I can do my final tightening on my axle. And remember, like I said, don't want to be pulling back on the axle at all. So I'm going to make sure that I'm pushing the tool forward and And remember now too, nothing has to be tightened up super tight here. This is all to avoid having to tighten your axle up to an extreme amount. I grabbed a torque wrench just so I can, for reference sake, just show you guys like how the difference in like how tight. Alright, the difference in the torques, I guess, that you would end up needing with these dual adjusters. So I don't need to, I think that the factory, like the manual would recommend like 60 foot-pounds normally for your rear axle. With this setup, I just tighten my axle to about 40 foot-pounds. So I just have a torque wrench here just to make sure that I'm not over tightening. Now, just going to 40 foot-pounds here. So I'm close. I'm close to 40 pounds on here now. I just want to stop at a flat spot here without having to go tighter than 40 pounds. So I backed my torque wrench off to 35 foot-pounds, just to make sure it was close to where I actually want it for torque, and the torque wrench clicked. So somewhere between 35 and 40 foot-pounds right now. And now that that is tight, now I'm going to just do my final. I can just tighten that up finally for the last time, and I'm just going to just double check just so that I am sure that these are the right tight, the same amount of tightness there. See, like, I'm using a finger, like none of this has to be very tight, just a light touch. And now I can tighten up my lock nuts so that this all stays in place. The lock nuts, obviously you're gonna want them to be a little bit tighter, or like tight enough that nothing's gonna move, right? So you're gonna wanna make sure those lock nuts are tight, because you want them tight enough that nothing's gonna shake loose, right? Don't need your axle coming loose. So you want to make those pretty tight. That's good. That one. Tighten this one up. And you want to obviously make sure that these don't back out. The bolts don't back out when you're tightening up your nuts, your lock nuts there. So keep a wrench on that. I usually just block my bike up with like a 4x4 and stuff, but I'll put this wedge, I'll roll my bike back up onto this wedge here. It's like an inch thick, maybe a little more than an inch, and I'll just back my back tire right up onto that wedge, and then I can slip a 4x4 under there while it's on the wedge, and then with help, I lean the bike over, and I'll just slip another like piece of a 1/2 inch piece of wood on the one side, and then I tilt it back over onto that side. Maybe I can show you guys how I do that too. But this wedge helps. But what I really need is one of those, like, it's like a little scissor jack that I know the mechanics when I was working at the dealership, a lot of them had it, and you just slide it under the bike. But I don't know, I haven't really looked for them or anything like that. But yeah, if you guys know where you can get one of those things normally, then let me know. Yeah, anyway, that should all be good now. I'm gonna double check on my chain. Yeah, and that's still good. Yeah. Here's just a little close-up of this setup again. I know I've shown you guys this before, but yeah, so again, these adjusters in the box, in the swing arm here, these are pulling the axle back, while these ones here are pushing it forward. And then, like I said, I've got my axle tightened to probably 15, 20 foot-pounds less torque than what the manual says you have to. So I'm not going to be I'm not going to be wrecking my swing arm at all. And I know of guys who have wrecked their swing arms tightening their axles up tight to get their axles tight enough so that they're not going to move. So yeah, this is all nice because nothing has to be super tight. Like you can literally you don't need to go crazy there with any of that stuff. And as you can see, my chain is got the proper amount of play in it now. That was pretty tight before right here in this spot. So that's all good. And I just want to add in there too, if for anyone who might not know how to adjust their chain tension yet, or if you haven't done it before or whatever, right? You always want to make sure that your chain, when you are adjusting that tension, that your chain is in the tightest point on the sprocket. So you just put your bike on a block and you just turn your rear wheel, and you just find the tightest point in your chain, because there's always going to be a tight spot because everything's metal down there, right? So there's always going to be a tight point in your chain, and that's where you want to adjust, and you want to have about 1.5 inches to 2 inches of up and down play or movement in that tightest spot, right? So yeah, my chain was a little bit tight. I probably had about 1 inch, or maybe about 1 inch of play in that tightest spot, maybe not even 1 inch. So that was definitely tighter than where it had to be. Yeah, so that's that. Hopefully you guys find that interesting, how these dual adjusters work and stuff. And if any of you, it's a great setup. If any of you want to try that on your own box tube swing arm frame, you just have to basically just add those tabs in where those bolts go through, and for the pushing on your axle part there. And yeah, try it out if you want to. But anyway, I've got all different questions and stuff in my comments. So I'm gonna be going through my comments at some point in the next couple days here, and I'll write down all these questions, and then I plan on putting a video together just to answer some of those questions. So that'll be my next video coming up probably. And another thing too is if there's a bit of a gap between me putting stuff out, that's just because I'm trying to figure out just a better way of editing the videos and stuff that I do take, because I'm just working off my cell phone, and my phone's old. It's like a 5 or 6 year old iPhone that's pretty outdated, and I'm just editing stuff on there, and the app keeps crashing and all these different things, and it's just not enough storage space and whatever. So I'm gonna be looking into getting a proper computer so that I can just cut down my editing time by an extreme amount, because right now it's just it's taken me a long time. That's why my videos always end up coming out at 2 or 3 in the morning, because I usually am up late just trying to get them edited. Yeah, so just gonna be getting some better equipment for that, and make this more of a streamlined kind of process there. And also I want to just throw in here, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, and you like what you see, or you just like me, or even if you don't like me but you like my bike, then please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave me a comment. And yeah, let me know what you guys think. Peace.